My name is Arthur Wallace. I'm 73 years old, and today I'm going to tell you the story of how my own daughter broke my heart the night before her wedding. Listen closely, because this story changed the rest of my life. If you're a father, if you have children you love more than life itself, you will understand every word I say. And if you're not, still listen, because someday this could happen to you too. I'm sitting in my small kitchen in Atlanta, in the house I built with my own two hands 30 years ago for my late Martha. The wooden table in front of me is covered with papers, receipts, bills, accounts, invoices, contracts. Tomorrow, just tomorrow, my only daughter, Skylar, is getting married to Devin Coleman, a good young man from a prominent family who own restaurants in the downtown business district. I prepared for this day for 18 months. 18 months, saving every single dollar. I sold the land I owned, the only thing I had left from my father, for $75,000. Can you imagine that amount? For people like me, a retired construction worker, it's a fortune. But I didn't regret spending a single penny on my princess. The banquet hall, the Grand Magnolia Estate, is booked for 200 guests. It's the best venue in Atlanta, with columns and fountains straight out of a movie. The wedding dress came from none other than Vanessa Ray Bridal Couture, that designer who sews for the rich families. $8,500 for a single gown. But what a dress it was. White with pearls and lace, fit for a queen. In my hands, the last invoice is trembling. The decoration for the Ebenezer Chapel with white roses and lilies. Skylar always dreamed of white lilies. Since she was a child, she'd say, "Daddy, when I get married, I'm going to have the most beautiful flowers in the world." And here they are. Everything is set. The live jazz band, the city's best photographer, the caterer who prepared food for the governor of Georgia. Every detail thought out. Every one of my daughter's dreams made a reality. I look at the hands holding this invoice. Calluses from the bricks, scars from the iron, fingers bent from years of working with cement. These hands built houses for other people for 50 years. But the most beautiful house I built was for Skylar, the house of her happiness, brick by brick, dollar by dollar. 18 months ago, when she announced her engagement, I didn't sleep all night. I counted and recounted. I decided to sell the property on the outskirts of the city, my dream of a little rental house for my old age, without a second thought, only the best for my princess. I told the buyer that as he handed me the money, and I meant every word. I get up from the table. I need to water the flowers in the garden. Early tomorrow, I'll cut the best row of roses for the bridal bouquet. Skylar wants to carry flowers from her daddy's garden. She told me a month ago, hugging me and kissing my cheek, "Daddy, your roses are the most beautiful in the world. They'll bring me luck." How she laughed then, how her eyes shone. My girl, my only joy, since Martha's death 8 years ago. I grabbed the old iron watering can. I walked to the spigot in the yard. The summer evening in Atlanta smells like southern air and magnolia blossoms. Neighbors are preparing dinner. I hear children's voices drifting from the windows. A normal day before the most special day of my life. Tomorrow my Sky will become Mrs. Coleman. She will join one of the best families in the city. Devin is a good young man, well-educated, from a respectable family. His father, Richard, owns 3 restaurants. His mother, Carol, is from an old merchant family. They welcomed my daughter as if she were their own, and I am grateful for that. I fill the watering can and head toward the rose bushes under Skylar's bedroom window. She's upstairs making final preparations. The makeup artist is coming at 7 tomorrow, followed by the hairdresser. She ordered me not to bother her, not to enter the room until it was time to leave for the church. "Daddy, it's bad luck to see the bride before the wedding," she joked yesterday. I nodded obediently, as always, when it came to her wishes. I leaned down to the first rose bush. I start watering slowly, carefully. I planted these roses 20 years ago, when Skylar was still a teenager. Every spring, I prune them, fertilize them, talk to them. Yes, imagine. I talk to the flowers like some old fool. But they understand me. They grow lush and beautiful, as flowers for a princess should. From the open window on the second floor, my daughter's voice drifts down. She's on the phone, probably with Devin. The tone is tender, intimate. The way she only speaks to her fiancé. I don't mean to listen, but her voice is loud, and the words reach me unintentionally. At first, it's just normal lovers' chatter. When will we see each other tomorrow? What to wear? Which guests have arrived? I move the watering can to the second rose bush. But then I hear words that stop my heart cold. "Honey, I'm so nervous about tomorrow. Not about the ceremony, not about the guests, but about my father." I freeze, the watering can in my hands. What is she worried about? What did I do wrong? Devin, you've seen it. My dad is just so unpolished. He always smells like cement, even after he showers. His hands are rough, calloused, like some simple laborer. I'm so embarrassed in front of your parents. The watering can trembles in my hands. Embarrassed. My Sky's embarrassed by me. Your mom, Carol, is so elegant. Your dad, Richard, so refined. And my father is just a construction worker. Devin, he even has that one old suit, the only one he owns. How is he going to look next to your family? My daughter's voice becomes more agitated, almost panicked. Listen, honey, I have an idea. What if we tell your parents Dad got sick? Remember, he had those back problems after that big job? We could say his sciatica flared up and he can't come to the ceremony. The world around me begins to spin. I grab the rose bush trunk. Thorns dig into my palm, but the physical pain is nothing compared to what's happening in my chest. No. He already gave us the money for everything. We don't need him anymore. The important thing is that he doesn't ruin the day with his appearance. Devin, understand me? I don't want your mom to think she's welcoming a girl from a blue-collar background into their family. This is about us, about our future. The watering can slips from my grasp. It clangs against the stone path. Water spills onto the ground, but I don't notice. 50 years of building, 50 years of calluses and sweat, a broken back, aching knees, all for her. All so she wouldn't lack anything, so she could go to school, dress well, meet respectable young men. It's a good thing he sold that land. Imagine him saving his whole life for a little rental house. But who cares about that? The important thing is, we have all the money now for a real wedding, and he can stay home without bothering anyone. I feel my knees buckle. I lean against the fence. I try to breathe normally. That property was my only hope for a quiet old age. A small house that could provide me with some income when my hands could no longer work. But I gave it up without a single regret, because I loved my daughter more than my own future. Devin, tell me the truth. Do I look like a simple laborer's daughter? I went to college. I work in an office. I dress nicely. No one needs to know where I really came from. Devin's voice sounds faint. He's far from the window, but I hear his agreement, his chuckle. He's laughing at his future father-in-law, the man who gave his last dollars for their happiness. Okay, honey, tomorrow morning, I'll tell Dad he looks peaked, that he should stay home. I'll tell him the doctor doesn't recommend he get too excited, and we'll explain to the guests that he had a bout of sciatica. I pick up the watering can with trembling hands. Mechanically, I continue watering the flowers, but my hands shake so badly that the water doesn't reach the roots. These roses I tended for 20 years for her happiness. These calloused hands she's ashamed of are the ones watering the flowers for her bouquet. You know, Devon, sometimes I think it's a good thing Mom passed away. She would have been upset seeing Dad ruin such an important day for me. Mom was more understanding. She would have agreed with us. Martha, my late wife, who loved Schuyler desperately, who on her deathbed asked me to care for our daughter as my most precious treasure. Arthur, she whispered in the hospital, our girl is all we have. Give her the best you can. And dear God, how I gave. I moved to the next rose bush. My legs feel like wood. My heart is pounding so loudly it seems like the whole neighborhood must hear it. 73 years of life, and never, never have I felt so humiliated. Not when other workers mocked my old tools, not when rich clients spoke to me like a servant, not when the hospital doctors shook their heads, looking at Martha's back, talking about expensive treatments we couldn't afford. Well, honey, I'm going to sleep now. Tomorrow is a huge day, our day, and no one is going to ruin it, especially not my embarrassing dad with his laborer's hands. I hear her hang up the phone, how she settles into bed, calm, happy, in the house her embarrassing dad built, in the room he furnished and decorated for his princess. I stand in my garden. I hold the watering can, looking at the roses that were supposed to be the bridal bouquet tomorrow. For 50 years I built other people's houses, dreaming of building something beautiful for my own family. And I built it. I built a whole life full of love and sacrifice for a girl who is now ashamed of the foundation upon which all her comfort is raised. Listener, tell me, what does an old father do when he discovers his only daughter considers him an embarrassment? When you realize that all your sacrifices, all the deprivations, all the sleepless nights working overtime were just a means to extract money from you and then hide you away like an unpleasant memory. I walk slowly to the spigot, emptying the remaining water from the can. Tomorrow at 7 in the morning, my daughter will become a bride. But at what price? At the price of denying the father who gave her everything. I go into the house, sit at the kitchen table, and look at the spread out documents. Every receipt is a piece of my life. Every expense is an hour of work from my unpolished hands. And in the end, shame. Shame for the man who loved her stronger than his own life. No, dear listener, it can't go on like this. I stay sitting on the steps of my house until late at night. I can't sleep. I can't even get up from this spot. My daughter's words turn in my head like a broken record. Embarrassing dad, unpolished, laborer's hands. And I review every day, every gesture, every cent given to this girl. Listener, you have to know the whole truth about what it means to love a daughter more than your own life. I remember that day in the hospital when Martha gave birth to Sky. May 28th, 1995, Thursday, 6:30 in the evening. The nurse placed this little bundle in my arms, and I cried like a child. So small, so fragile. I was afraid of breaking her with my coarse construction worker fingers. Martha looked at me from the hospital bed and whispered, "Arthur, these hands are going to build her a palace." I didn't understand then that she wasn't talking about a palace of stone and cement. She was talking about a palace of love. The first few months, I didn't sleep at night. I worked construction from 6 in the morning until 6 in the evening. I came home tired, covered in dust. But if Sky cried, I forgot all about my exhaustion. I changed diapers with these same calloused hands she's now ashamed of. I fed her a bottle, rocked her in my arms, and sang her lullabies with my rough voice. Martha would laugh. "Arthur, you have a voice like a bear, but the girl only falls asleep with your songs." When Skylar turned 3, she saw a doll with a pink dress in a store window. She stopped dead in her tracks, pressed her nose to the glass, and said, "Daddy, she's pretty like a princess." The doll cost half my monthly salary. I was working then building a school in downtown Atlanta. I put up walls in the heat and the rain, but the next day I went to the foreman. I asked for extra shifts. I worked for 2 weeks without rest. The skin peeled off my hands against the bricks. My back ached so much I couldn't stand up straight. But the doll appeared in our house, and Skylar hugged me so tightly that I was ready to build schools until the end of my days for those hugs. I remember when she was 7, she wanted a bicycle, not just any bike, but the prettiest one in the store, pink, with white ribbons on the handlebars and a basket for flowers. "Daddy," she'd say, looking at me with her big brown eyes, "real princesses ride this kind of bike." I was working then on a residential complex for rich families. I saw what kind of bicycles the architects and engineers bought for their kids. I took extra work on the weekends. I unloaded construction materials at the dock, heavy sacks of cement, iron beams, work for young men, and I was already over 40. But after 3 months, the bicycle was in our yard, and Skylar rode up and down the street, laughing with joy. The neighborhood kids were jealous. Their parents shook their heads. Arthur is spoiling that girl, living beyond his means. The school problems started with her grades. Her teacher, Mrs. Rosa, called a meeting. She told me, "Mr. Wallace, Skylar needs tutoring. Otherwise, she won't get into a good college. Private tutors were expensive, but how could I let my princess go without an education?" I sold Grandpa's old tools. I took out a bank loan. Every afternoon after work, Skylar sat with the tutors, studying math, English, literature, and meanwhile, I washed dishes at Mr. John's local diner to earn the money for those classes. My hands, accustomed to cement and bricks, washed plates and glasses until midnight. I came home when Skylar was already asleep, but I always looked into her room. I'd look at my sleeping princess and think, I'm doing everything right. College was a whole other story. When Skylar announced she wanted to study business administration at the private Clayton University, I didn't immediately understand the magnitude of the expenses. One semester cost what I made in half a year. But how could I say no to my girl? I sold Grandpa John's old Ford F-100 pickup, the red one Grandpa used to drive up from the farm with produce. It was a family heirloom, but Skylar was more important than any relic. I went into debt. I took out loans from 3 banks. For 5 years, I paid $15,000 every semester. I worked 2 construction jobs at the same time. I didn't take vacations. I didn't even buy new clothes for myself. I remember graduation day at the university. Skylar in a white dress, diploma in her hands, radiating happiness. She ran to me, hugged me, and said, "Daddy, thank you for everything. I know how hard my schooling was for you." That day, I was the happiest father in the world. All the sacrifices, all the deprivations seemed insignificant compared to her smile. I thought, here is my reward. My daughter has an education. She's going to become an important lady. She'll work in an office. She won't ruin her back on construction sites. After college, Skylar got a secretarial job at a downtown law office. The salary was small, but it was just the beginning. She needed decent clothes for the office. Shoes, bags, cosmetics, everything that belongs to an educated young woman. I didn't complain. On the contrary, I was proud that my daughter left the house every morning like a true lady. The neighbors would say, "Arthur, your Sky turned into quite the lady. Not like our girls." And I smiled. I was happy that everything turned out as we planned. And then Devin Coleman appeared, a handsome, educated young man from a good family. When Skylar brought him home for the first time, I understood immediately. She was truly in love. He was courteous. He called me Mr. Wallace. He was interested in my work. "Mr. Wallace, Ben," he said to me, "I admire people who create something with their hands. Architecture is art, but without masters like you, it just stays on paper." I liked this young man. He seemed to value the work of simple people. When they announced the engagement, Skylar shone like the sun. "Daddy," she said, hugging me in the kitchen, "I'm so happy." Devin asked me to marry him, and I said yes. "Are you happy for me?" Of course, I was happy. My princess found her love, her happiness. What more does a father need? But then the conversations about the wedding began. Devin comes from a wealthy family. They have their traditions, their standards. Skylar became nervous. "Daddy, I need a real wedding so Devin's family understands I'm worthy of their son." And then I made the decision that now seems like the biggest folly of my life. The property on the outskirts of the city, my only hope for a quiet old age. I bought it for 20 years, dollar by dollar. I dreamed of building a small house there and renting it out. When I was completely old, when my hands could no longer hold a trowel, that house would feed me. But for my daughter's happiness, I was willing to give everything. "Sky," I told her that day, when I signed the sales contract, "this money is for your happiness. I want your wedding to be the most beautiful in Atlanta." She cried with joy, kissed my hands, these same calloused hands she's now ashamed of. "Daddy, you are the best in the world. I will never forget what you did for me." 18 months of planning. Every weekend, Skylar and I went shopping. We chose details for the wedding. She consulted me on everything. What flowers are best? What music should we request? What menu should we have? "Daddy," she'd say, "I couldn't do it without you. You understand what I need better than I do myself." And I was happy, feeling needed, important in her life. I remember choosing the wedding dress at Vanessa Ray's studio. Skylar tried on several, but when she walked out of the dressing room in that white dress with pearls and lace, I gasped with admiration. "Princess," I whispered, and she laughed. "Daddy, don't cry, 'cause I'll start crying too, and you shouldn't ruin the makeup." $8,500 for the dress, half of all my savings. But how can you regret the money when your daughter looks like an angel? Every night before sleeping, I sat at this table and recalculated the expenses. Banquet hall, dress, flowers, music, photographer. Everything was the best. I can't say it was easy. My teeth ached so much it was impossible to eat. But I didn't go to the dentist. The money was needed more for the wedding. The soles of my old boots wore through, but I didn't buy new ones. Every dollar was for Sky. I slept on the old mattress with the springs poking out, because all the money was going toward her happiness. And now, sitting on these steps, I understand the full bitterness of the situation. 28 years of sacrifice, 28 years of love, and in the end, she's ashamed of me. Ashamed of these hands that rocked her in infancy, that bought her toys, that paid for her education, that created her happiness today. She's ashamed of the man who gave her his entire life, without reservation. Listener, do you understand what a father feels at a moment like this? It's not just pain. It's the sensation that your whole life was pointless, that the love you thought was the purest in the world turned out to be just a way to extract money and comforts from you. I get up from the steps and go into the house. Tomorrow at 7 in the morning, the happiest day of my daughter's life is supposed to begin. But who will I be at that party? An unwelcome guest they're ashamed to show to decent people. A man they tolerate only because he already paid for everything. No, dear listener. I refuse to be the fool who buys his own daughter's love at the price of humiliation. At dawn, 4 hours before the ceremony, I get out of bed and look at myself in the mirror. Old face, gray hair, tired eyes. But in those eyes, there is no longer confusion. Only the calm determination of a man who has finally understood what is being done to him. I put on my only black suit, the same one I buried Martha in, the same one I was going to wear to my daughter's wedding. I straighten my tie, comb my hair. It's important to look dignified on a day like this. I take the folder of documents from the table, all the receipts, all the contracts, all the evidence of 18 months of preparation for this celebration. Each piece of paper is a piece of my life. Each signature is a drop of blood. But if my daughter is ashamed of the man who gave her all of this, then she doesn't deserve such a gift. Listener, do you understand the logic of an old man? I don't want revenge. I just want to recover my dignity. First call to Ms. Charlotte, the manager of the Grand Magnolia Estate. She answers with a sleepy voice. She still doesn't understand what's happening. Good morning, ma'am. This is Arthur Wallace, the bride's father. Today's wedding is canceled due to family circumstances. A pause. Then an agitated voice. Mr. Wallace, but how? Everything is ready. The tables are set. The musicians have already arrived. Guests will start arriving in 3 hours. I apologize for the inconvenience, ma'am, but the bride no longer needs this celebration. She tries to convince me. She talks about penalties, about reputation, about how this isn't done on the day of the wedding. And I listen to her panic and feel a strange calm. For the first time in 18 months, I make a decision not for my daughter, but for myself. And this sensation is like a breath of fresh air after being in a suffocating room for too long. Second call to the designer, Vanessa Ray, the elegant woman who sews dresses for Atlanta's richest families. Her studio is already open. The dress is supposed to be delivered at 10 in the morning. Ms. Ray, this is Arthur Wallace. The wedding dress for my daughter will no longer be needed. Mr. Wallace, what are you saying? The dress is ready. It's magnificent. Did something happen to Miss Schuyler? Everything is fine with my daughter. She simply doesn't need this dress anymore. Ms. Ray is an intelligent woman. In her voice, I hear understanding. She doesn't ask further questions. She just says, I'm sorry for what happened, Mr. Wallace. The dress will remain in my studio. Third call to the florist, Ms. Clara, the woman who spent all week preparing arrangements of white roses and lilies. My Ski's dream since childhood. Miss Clara, The flowers for the Coleman Wallace wedding are canceled. Oh, Mr. Arthur, but the flowers are already cut. The arrangements were ready. What should I do with them? Give them to the church for the regular service. Let them serve God, not vanity. One by one, I call the vendors, the live jazz band that was going to play Skylar's favorite songs, Rick, the photographer, who dreamed of shooting the wedding of the century, Mr. Emilio, the caterer, with his exquisite menu. Each conversation is like removing heavy chains from my soul. Mr. Wallace, but why? What happened? And I answer the same thing. The bride no longer needs these services. I don't say I canceled. I don't say we decided. I say, she doesn't need them. Let them think what they want. But the truth remains the truth. The daughter who is ashamed of her father does not deserve his sacrifices. After the calls, I go to the bank. Carlos, the young employee who processed the loans for Skylar's studies, is surprised by the early visit. Mr. Arthur, how are you? Today's your daughter's wedding. Carlos, I need to put a block on my account. No transactions without my personal presence. The young man doesn't understand. He tries to clarify, but I insist. I sign documents, affix seals. Now not a single dollar will leave my account without my consent. Devin and Skylar are left without the financial support they took for granted. I return home, sit at the kitchen table, and write a note. The words come out on their own, as if I had been preparing for this moment my whole life. Sky, since my cement smell and rough hands might ruin your party, I decided not to bother you. The wedding is canceled, and the money stays with me. I will spend it on something more worthy. Your embarrassing dad. I reread it, correcting a few words. I don't want to sound cruel. I want to sound fair. I put the note in an envelope, write "for Skylar" on it, and place it on the hall table, where she is sure to see it. Listener, do you understand what I feel at this moment? It's not the joy of revenge. It's the relief of a man who stopped being a fool. 73 years of life, and only now am I doing something exclusively for me, for my dignity. I go to the garden and look at the roses that were supposed to be the bridal bouquet yesterday, beautiful flowers cultivated with love by these same unpolished hands. I cut some of the best ones. I go to the cemetery, where Martha lies. The grave is well tended. Every week, I bring fresh flowers. Every month, I polish the marble headstone. Martha, I say aloud, placing the roses on the grave. Our daughter grew up, but not as we dreamed. She's ashamed of us. She's ashamed of what we gave her. Forgive me, but I can no longer continue buying her love at the price of humiliation. The wind moves the leaves of the old cypress tree next to the grave. It seems to me that Martha understands. She was always wiser than me. She always saw people deep down. Perhaps she would have noticed this hardness in our daughter's character while she was alive, but I was too blinded by a father's love. I return home at 10 in the morning. According to the plan, the makeup artist should be arriving for Skylar now, followed by the hairdresser. At 1:30, the photo session in the garden. At 2, departure for the church. But the plans have changed. The house is silent. I only hear the ticking of the old kitchen clock, the same one I inherited from my father. I sit in Martha's favorite armchair, where she used to knit and read books. I open the newspaper, but I don't read. I just hold it in front of my eyes. I wait. I understand that the storm will begin soon, but I am ready for it. For the first time in my life, I know I am doing the right thing. At 10:30, I hear footsteps on the stairs. Skylar comes down for breakfast, humming a tune. She's happy, anticipating her big day. She goes to the kitchen, puts the kettle on, and then sees the note on the hall table, the rustle of paper. A pause. Then a scream. "Daddy! Daddy, what does this mean?" I get up from the armchair and go to the hall. Skylar is in her robe, her hair messy, her face pale, my note in her hands. A beautiful girl, my daughter. But in this moment, I see a complete stranger in her. It means exactly what it says, Sky. "Daddy, what nonsense is this? What cancellation? The guests are already coming. Everything is ready." "It's not ready anymore. I canceled everything an hour ago." She stares at me like I'm crazy. She can't believe what she's hearing. "You've gone mad. Do you have senile dementia? How could you cancel my wedding?" I want to answer loudly, but I hold back. My daughter doesn't yet know that I heard her conversation with Devin. "Sky, last night I was watering the roses in the garden, and I heard your phone conversation. You were telling your fiancé that you were ashamed of me, that I was unpolished, that it would be better if I didn't go to your wedding." My daughter's face changes. First shock, then confusion, then an attempt to justify herself. "Daddy, you misunderstood. I was just nervous." I understood perfectly well. You said you were ashamed of my hands, that I smelled like cement, that you didn't want Devin's parents to think you came from a working-class family. Well, little girl, you won't have to be ashamed anymore. I'm staying home. Skylar tries to hug me, but I move away. "Daddy, please, don't do anything foolish." I said it without thinking. I didn't mean it. You meant it, Sky. You thought very clearly, and now I'm thinking clearly too. Just then, the phone rings. Probably a vendor reporting my cancellations. Skylar runs to the phone, speaking agitatedly, trying to fix something. But it's too late. The mechanism is in motion and cannot be stopped. I go to my room, close the door, and listen as Skylar calls Devin. How she cries, how she explains the situation. Then calls to other people, probably the guests. Her voice becomes more and more desperate. "Listener, tell me, am I doing the right thing? Maybe I should just shut up, endure the humiliation, give my daughter her party." But then, what would be left of my dignity? What would be left of the memory of Martha, who didn't live to see this day, but gave all her strength for this girl? No. A father's love should not be bought at the price of self-respect. If the daughter cannot accept the father as he is, then she does not deserve his sacrifices. I sit in my room and listen as the carefully constructed world of wedding dreams collapses. And you know what, dear listener? For the first time in many years, I feel free. An hour after the vendors started calling Skylar, my phone won't stop ringing. First, she calls herself. Her voice is full of rage and desperation. "Daddy, what did you do? Guests are already coming from out of town. Everything was paid for, everything ready." Devin is in shock. His parents don't understand what's happening. I answer calmly. Every word weighed. Everything was paid for by my rough hands that you're ashamed of, Sky. Now these hands are no longer working for your happiness. Then Devin calls, and in his voice, there is none of the courtesy he used before. Now it's the voice of a furious man from a good family whose plans were ruined by a simple construction worker. "Mr. Wallace, you are behaving improperly. How can you cancel a wedding on the day of the ceremony? This is a mental disturbance. You need medical help." I listen to his threats and understand. The mask has completely fallen. No one calls me Mr. Wallace anymore. No one pretends to respect me. Devin, I tell him, my daughter told you yesterday she was ashamed of her construction worker father. I heard it. Now, she won't have to be ashamed anymore. He shouts something about money, about reputation, about how I destroyed the young couple's life. And I hang up the phone and think, what irony. The man who laughed at his future father-in-law is now outraged because that father-in-law stopped being a fool. The following days are spent amidst phone calls and scandals. Skylar comes every day. She tries to convince me to return the money, to reinstate the wedding. Daddy, I've apologized 100 times. What more do you need? I was foolish. I said what I didn't mean. But in her eyes, I see no remorse. I see anger because her plans were ruined. She doesn't understand that she hurt me. She only understands that she was left without a beautiful wedding. Sky, I tell her during one of these visits, tell me honestly, are you truly not ashamed that your father is a simple worker? That he has calloused hands and an old suit? She hesitates for a second, and that second is enough to understand the whole truth. Daddy, it's not about that. I just wanted everything to be perfect. And in those words, I hear the confirmation. Yes, she is ashamed. She's only trying to hide it now because she needs the money. A week later, I receive a summons from the court. Skylar and Devin have filed a lawsuit demanding that I be declared incompetent. The documents state Arthur Wallace shows signs of senile dementia, makes inadequate decisions. He requires guardianship and forced treatment. The proof cited is the cancellation of his own daughter's wedding on the day of the ceremony, without visible reasons. I read these lines and can't believe it. My own daughter is trying to declare me insane to gain control over my money. Devin's lawyer turns out to be an elegant man in an expensive suit, Mr. Sterling, who specializes in family matters for wealthy clients. In the first hearing, he solemnly declares to the judge, Your Honor, before us is a tragic case of progressive dementia. An elderly man destroyed his own daughter's wedding. He caused suffering to a young couple. He acted in a completely irrational manner. The family asks the court to protect him from himself. They bring in certificates from private doctors, a psychiatrist, a neurologist, a therapist. All the documents say the same thing. Arthur Wallace presents signs of dementia, loss of critical thinking, inability to make balanced decisions. I read these false diagnoses and understand. Devin has good connections, good money, good doctors willing to write anything for the right fee. Witnesses also appear. Mrs. Lopez, a neighbor whom Devin surely paid, tells the court Mr. Wallace became strange in recent months. He talked to himself in the garden. He forgot to say hello. He behaved inappropriately. Pete, a construction partner I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, suddenly recalls Arthur was losing tools, getting confused on simple things. I thought it was his age. I understand. It's a well-organized campaign to discredit me. Mr. Sterling puts on a whole show in the courtroom. Your Honor, look at this man. He's sitting here all lonely, not understanding the seriousness of the situation, not understanding that he destroyed the lives of 2 young people with his deranged actions. This is a classic sign of dementia, an absence of criticism toward one's own behavior. And the judge, an older woman, Judge Harper, listens carefully. She takes notes, nods. Relatives begin to whisper behind my back. Martha's cousin, Aunt Carla, calls the neighbors. Poor Sky. Grandpa went crazy. Imagine, he canceled the wedding at the last minute. Of course, age, illness, what can you do? My nephew, Joe, my late brother's son, suddenly starts taking an interest in my health. Uncle Arthur, maybe you need help. I can take care of your financial affairs so you don't have to worry. And in his affectionate words, I hear greed. Everyone thinks the old man has gone mad and wants to tear off a piece. In the second hearing, Mr. Sterling brings new evidence. It turns out I bought expensive things for the wedding impulsively. I spent money irrationally. I behaved like a person with an altered mind. Your Honor, he declares, a normal father would not have spent all his savings on a single wedding. This is a sign of altered thinking. And then the cancellation of everything a few hours before the ceremony. This is the behavior of a sick man who needs protection from his own decisions. Schuyler plays the role of the loving daughter in court. Dressed modestly, she speaks softly. Periodically, she dabs her eyes with a tissue. Your Honor, I'm very worried about Daddy. He's become forgetful, strange. He makes decisions he can't explain. I'm afraid he might hurt himself or others. I need guardianship over him to ensure he gets the right treatment. And listening to these words from my own daughter, I feel something definitively break in my soul. But I don't stand idly by, listener. I find a lawyer, not as elegant as Devon's, but honest. Frank Harris, a man my age, who understands what it means to live by honest work and face injustice. Mr. Wallace, he tells me after our first meeting, this isn't a case about mental health. It's a case about money and dignity. We are going to prove that you are completely sane. First, I go for a full medical examination at Fulton County General Hospital, not to private doctors who can be bought, but to state doctors who have nothing to hide. Dr. Miller, the psychiatrist, ironically, the same surname as the groom, spends 3 hours examining me, memory, attention, logical thinking, orientation in space and time. Mr. Wallace went, he tells me at the end, you have an excellent memory and clear thinking. No signs of dementia are observed. Dr. Sanchez, the neurologist, does a brain scan, checks reflexes and coordination. The result is the same. Complete normalcy for a person my age. Dr. Green, the therapist, checks my general health status. Normal blood pressure, heart working well, no chronic illnesses. Physically, I am healthier than many 50-year-olds. Mr. Harris gathers testimonials from true witnesses. Manuel, the foreman, with whom I worked the last 10 years. Arthur is the most trustworthy and sensible person I know. There were never any problems with his memory or decision-making. Mr. Emilio, the neighbor. Arthur takes care of the house and garden better than any young man. He always helps with chores. He gives sensible advice. The clerk at the store where I buy food. Mr. Wallace is always courteous. He remembers prices. He counts the change without errors. But the main evidence is the documents from my wedding preparation. Mr. Harris spreads them on the table in front of the judge. Your Honor, look at these receipts, contracts, plans. 18 months of systematic and methodical preparation. Every expense considered, every decision weighed. This is the work of an absolutely sane mind, planning an important family event. In the third hearing, I ask for the floor. I stand in front of the judge, holding the folder of documents in my hands, and say what accumulated within me during these weeks of humiliation. Your Honor, I am Arthur Wallace, 73 years old, a builder with 50 years of experience. I worked honestly all my life. I raised my daughter. I loved her more than my own life. I prepared for her wedding for 18 months. I spent all my savings. I sold the only property I had. my dream of a quiet old age. I read the list of expenses aloud. Banquet hall, $12,000. Wedding dress, $8,500. Flowers, $1,500. Musicians, $2,000. Each figure represents weeks and months of my labor. Every dollar earned by these same calloused hands that my daughter is ashamed of. And then I continue, looking directly at Skylar. The night before the wedding, I overheard a phone conversation between my daughter and her fiancé. She said she was ashamed of me, that I was unpolished, that I smelled like cement, that I had rough hands, that it would be better to tell the guests I was sick so as not to ruin the party with my presence. The courtroom falls silent. Judge Harper looks at me intently, then at Skylar, who has turned pale and lowered her eyes. Tell me, Your Honor, is it a sign of madness when a father refuses to buy his daughter's love at the price of his own humiliation? Is it an illness when a man defends his dignity? My daughter received everything from me: childhood, education, care, my last dollars. In return, I received shame for the person who gave her all of this. And now she wants to declare me insane to gain control over my money. But I am not crazy, Your Honor. I simply stopped being a fool. Mr. Sterling tries to object, talking about an inadequate reaction and emotional instability. But Judge Harper raises her hand, stopping him. Mr. Harris? And then my honest lawyer utters the words that turn the entire case around. Your Honor, if canceling a wedding due to a daughter's disrespect is a sign of madness, what can be said about the disrespect itself? If spending money on a child's happiness is an illness, what can be said about the shame toward the person who earned that money? My client is not sick. He simply woke up from his illusions and saw the truth. The court issues the verdict a week later. Judge Harper reads the judgment in a calm voice. The court finds Arthur Wallace completely competent. Medical examinations revealed no mental disorder. The cancellation of the wedding, although it caused inconvenience, was a conscious decision by a man defending his dignity. The lawsuit is dismissed. Skylar and Devin are left with debts from the ruined wedding and destroyed reputations in the city. The story about the daughter who was ashamed of her father and got what she deserved spread through Atlanta faster than any gossip. Devin can no longer look his friends in the eye. Everyone knows he laughed at the father-in-law who paid for his wedding. Skylar quits her job. Colleagues whisper behind her back about the ungrateful daughter. Leaving the courtroom, I don't feel the joy of victory, but deep relief. The truth has been restored. Dignity has been defended. But the price of this victory is the loss of my daughter, the destruction of my family, and loneliness in my old age. Listener, do you understand this choice? Sometimes you have to lose everything to save yourself. The court rules in my favor, but this victory is bitter. Listener, I am standing on the steps of the courthouse. I hold the documents confirming my competence in my hands, and I understand. I won the battle, but I lost the war. My daughter no longer calls. She doesn't visit. She doesn't even look at me when we meet on the street. Devin moved to New York. He found a job in the city, far from the town, where everyone knows the story of the ruined wedding. And I remain in Atlanta, alone, in the house I built for a family that no longer exists. The first few weeks after the trial, I sit in the kitchen and look at the empty walls. Every corner reminds me of Skylar. She did her homework here. We had Sunday breakfast here. In that room, upstairs, she dreamed of the future. But now, these memories don't warm the soul. They cut like a knife. I understand. I can no longer live in this house, where every object screams about the lost daughter. The neighbors behave differently. Some are sympathetic. Mr. Emilio comes over for coffee every day. He says, "Arthur, you acted like a true man. Dignity is worth more than the love of ungrateful children." Others whisper behind my back. Aunt Carla tells everyone I'm a cruel old man who destroyed his own daughter's happiness. But I don't care what people think. The important thing is that I know the truth about myself. A month later, I make a decision that surprises even myself. I go to the real estate agency. I tell the young woman behind the desk, I want to sell the house and buy something by the sea. She's surprised why an old man would change his established life, but I insist. The house in Atlanta sells quickly. Good neighborhood. Solid construction, fair price. The buyer, an engineer with a young wife, examines the rooms and says, "It looks like people lived here with love." "Yes," I reply. "They lived with love, but the love ran out." With the money from the sale, I moved to Charleston, South Carolina. I never thought that at 73, I would start a new life. But destiny decided it this way. On the outskirts of the port city, in an old fisherman's quarter, I find a small house overlooking the Atlantic coast. White walls, a red-tiled roof, a porch from which you can see the infinite blue of the ocean. The previous owner, a sea captain named Mr. Raphael, grew old and moved to the city with his children. "This house, Mr. Wallace, is built for solitude," he tells me, showing the rooms. "You can think well here, read, watch the water. The sound of the waves calms the soul, better than any medicine." I buy the little house for half the money I got from the sale in Atlanta. The rest I save, not for myself, but for other purposes that I will talk about later. I move to Charleston with one suitcase and a box of Martha's photos. I take nothing else. All the furniture, all the things remain in the previous life. In the new house, I buy only the essentials: a simple bed, a wooden table, 2 chairs, a stove for cooking. I no longer need luxury, just peace. I greet the first morning in the house by the sea on the porch with a cup of coffee in my hands. The sun rises from the water, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The waves lap the shore with a measured sound. Seagulls cry over the water. Fishermen prepare their boats to go out to sea. I sit and think, here's the place where my hands no longer build for ungrateful people. Here, they hold a cup of coffee. They stroke the stray cat that attached itself to me. They tend a small garden with tomatoes and peppers. The cat appeared a week after the move, reddish, thin, with a torn ear. It looked like life hadn't pampered him. At first, he sat on the fence, watching me drink my morning coffee. Then he started approaching, meowing, begging. I gave him milk, a piece of fish. He ate carefully and left. But the next day, he returned. I named him Captain in honor of the house's previous owner. Now he is my only companion. He sleeps on the porch. He greets me purring when I return from the store. The neighbors in the fisherman's quarter are simple people, accustomed to work and hardship. They don't ask unnecessary questions. They don't pry into other people's lives, but they are always ready to help. Mr. John, the owner of the boat Seagull, brings me fresh fish every Friday. He simply says, "For the neighbor." Mrs. Consuela, the fisherman's wife, gives me a fresh-baked sweet potato pie. Children play in the street, shouting, "Good morning, Mr. Arthur," when they pass by. They don't know me as the father of an ungrateful daughter. They know me as the neighbor who lives peacefully and bothers no one. Days in Charleston pass slowly and quietly. I get up at dawn when the sun is still hiding behind the horizon. I prepare coffee, go out to the porch, watch the sea wake up. I read newspapers, but I no longer follow politics and scandals. I am only interested in the weather and fishing news. After breakfast, I go to the small garden behind the house, water tomatoes and peppers and weed. These vegetables grow only for me. There is no one else to feed. At noon, when the sun becomes too hot, I rest inside. I read books from the local library. I discovered sea stories, novels about captains, and storms about distant countries and adventures. All my life, I read only newspapers and technical magazines. And now, I immerse myself in invented worlds and realize how much I lost during years of endless work. In the evening, I go out to the porch again. I prepare a simple dinner, fish with vegetables, sometimes a bowl of beans. I eat slowly, savoring the flavor, listening to the sound of the waves. After eating, I sit in the old rocking chair I found in the shed. I smoke a pipe, a habit I quit 30 years ago, but which I have now recovered. The tobacco smoke mixes with the salty air, creating a special aroma of peace. Sometimes in the evenings, memories of Martha arrive, not painful, like in the first months after her death, but luminous ones that warm the soul. I remember how she dreamed of going to the sea. We planned to buy a small house by the water in our old age, listen to the waves, and watch the sunsets. Arthur, she'd tell me, when Sky grows up and settles down, we'll go to the sea. We'll live like we're on a honeymoon, just for ourselves. Martha didn't live to see these plans, but now I fulfill them alone, for both of us. 3 months into life in Charleston, I understand. I found what I was looking for, all my life without knowing it. Peace. Not the peace that comes from exhaustion, but the peace born from self-acceptance. For the first time in decades, I don't think about what I owe someone, who I need to make happy at my expense, or that the needs of others are more important than mine. But the most important decision is made in the 4th month of life by the sea. I go to the notary in downtown Charleston, old Mr. Castillo, who handles the affairs of fishermen and small merchants. I want to write a will, I tell him. He pulls out papers, preparing to write down the names of children and grandchildren. But I surprise him. All the money I have left, I will bequeath to St. Jude's Youth Home in Atlanta. Mr. Castillo raises his eyebrows. Mr. Wallace, what about family? I explain the whole story about the daughter who was ashamed of her father, about the wedding I canceled, about the trial, and the broken relationship. The old notary listens intently, nodding with understanding. I see, Mr. Wallace. Sometimes other people's children value kindness more than your own. In the will, we write everything down to the details. The money will go toward the care of the orphans, their education, and medical attention. These children won't be ashamed of the hands that feed them. I also bequeath the small house by the sea to the youth home. After my death, they will sell it. The money will go toward the children's needs. Mr. Castillo, I say, signing the documents, let this money serve those who truly need help. Parentless children who will be grateful for every dollar, every opportunity. The notary puts the seal on it, stores the papers in the safe. Now my conscience is clear. After my death, nothing will remain that can be an object of greed. Schuyler hasn't called me in all the months I've lived in Charleston. Sometimes I hear news through mutual acquaintances in Atlanta. She works at another company, rents a small apartment, and lives alone. Devin didn't return from New York. They say he's dating some office worker, but there are no serious relationships. And I feel neither pity nor anger, only indifference toward a life that is not mine. That girl I loved more than my own life died to me that afternoon when she called me her embarrassing dad. Instead, I received letters from the director of the youth home, Pastor Michael. I tell him about my plans, about the will, about wanting to help the orphans while I'm still alive. Every month, I send small amounts to the youth home for school supplies, for clothes, for holiday toys. Pastor Michael writes thank you letters telling me about the children my money helps. Mr. Wallace, he writes, your kindness gives these children hope. They pray for you every evening. Sometimes I sit on the porch with these letters in my hands and think about the strangeness of life. I gave 28 years to my daughter. I received shame and betrayal. I have helped other people's children for a few months, and I receive sincere gratitude and prayers. Perhaps that is the truth about love. It must be voluntary, not bought with sacrifices. 1 year of life in Charleston passes without my noticing. I got a tan from the ocean sun. I grew stronger from the simple life. My soul calmed down. Dr. Ray, the local doctor who examines all the fishermen, is surprised by my condition. Mr. Wallace, you look better than many 50-year-olds. The sea air and peace work miracles. Yes, peace is the main medicine for the old soul. In the 2nd year, I buy a small boat from Mr. John, a simple boat for coastal trips. I learned to handle it like a child. In my childhood, I dreamed of being a sailor, but life led me to construction and cement. Now, at 74, I fulfill my childhood dream. I sail near the shore. I fish for myself and for Captain. I watch sunsets on the open sea. The hands that laid bricks for 50 years now hold the helm and the oars. And this is right. They earned rest and joy. Every morning, I thank Martha for being there in the other world, approving my choice. Martha, I say aloud, standing on the porch with my cup of coffee. I built myself a dignified old age. I no longer build for the ungrateful. I only build for myself, a house of peace by the sea. And it seems to me that in the sound of the waves, I hear her reply. That's right, Arthur. You finally live for yourself. In the evenings, when the sun sets into the sea and the sky is painted in red hues, I sit in the rocking chair and take stock of the day. Today I watered the garden. I spoke with the neighbor. I read a chapter of the book about sea voyages. I prepared fish. I fed the cat. Simple things, but each one is for me, for my pleasure. No one is ashamed of me. No one demands sacrifices. No one calls me unpolished. And in this house by the sea, where no one is ashamed of the man who lives in it, I am finally home. Days turn into years, listener. 3 years have passed since I left Atlanta. 3 years of a new life by the Atlantic coast. My hair has turned completely white. The wrinkles have deepened. But my soul has found the calmness I sought all my life without knowing it. Captain is now a fat, lazy cat who sleeps in the sun like a king. The small garden yields tomatoes and peppers tastier than any store-bought vegetable. The boat has become a part of me. I know every current, every rock, every spot where the fish bite best. The children at the youth home continue to write thank you letters. Pastor Michael tells me that with my help, 3 boys finished high school and 2 started college. Mr. Wallace, he writes, these children don't have fathers, but they have you as an example of kindness. They learn that there are good people in the world. I read these letters and think, finally, my money is going where it should go, to those who truly value it. Sometimes news of Skylar reaches me through former acquaintances who visit. She married that office worker. She lives in an artist apartment. She works as a secretary at another company. She hasn't had children. They say she can't or doesn't want to. Her husband is a simple man, without great ambitions, without family money, an ordinary, everyday life, without luxuries or fulfilled dreams. And you know what, listener? I feel neither joy nor sadness about this news. It is the life of a stranger who was once my daughter. One evening, sitting on my porch watching the sunset, a letter arrives that I wasn't expecting. The sender, Skylar Wallace Sanchez. For the first time in 3 years, my daughter writes to me. My hands tremble slightly as I open the envelope, not from emotion, but from cold curiosity. Daddy, the letter says, I know I have no right to write to you after everything that happened. I know I hurt you with my foolish words, that I behaved badly. 3 years have passed, and every day I think about what I did. My life didn't turn out as I dreamed. Devin left me for someone else. I don't have children. I work at a job I don't like. Sometimes I think all of this is punishment for how I treated you. I ask for your forgiveness, Daddy. Can we see each other? Can we try to be a family again? I read the letter twice. I leave it on the table. I go for a walk along the beach. The waves come and go as always, indifferent to human dramas. I think about those words, punishment, forgiveness, be a family again, and I realize I feel nothing. No anger, no joy, no desire for revenge, no urge for reconciliation. Only a tranquil emptiness where a father's love once was. That night, I write a short response, without cruelty, but without false hope. Sky, I received your letter. I thank you for the apology, but the damage is done. Not by the words you said, but by what they revealed about your heart. A father can forgive many things, but he cannot trust again the person who was ashamed of him. I found my peace far from those who did not value me. I wish you the best in your life, but that life no longer includes the father I once was to you. Arthur Wallace. I mail the letter and don't wait for a reply. None arrives. Skylar understood that some decisions cannot be undone, that some bridges, once burned, cannot be rebuilt. Today, listener, at 76 years old, I sit on this porch facing the sea and can say with serenity, I made the right decision. I wasn't the perfect father. Perhaps I was too permissive. Perhaps I gave too much without teaching the value of sacrifices. But when the time came to choose between dignity and purchased love, I chose dignity. Children are not the property of parents. Parents give all they can, but they cannot guarantee that children will value those gifts. Sometimes, the greatest lesson a father can give is to show that true love is not begged for, that respect is not bought with sacrifices, that human dignity is worth more than any family relationship. My house by the sea is filled with the peace I never had in Atlanta. Here I don't build for the ungrateful. I don't work for the unappreciative. I don't buy affection with humiliation. Here, I simply live, and for the first time in 76 years, that is enough for me. The sun is setting again over the Atlantic coast. Captain is purring on my legs. The sea breeze brings the smells of salt and freedom. Tomorrow will be another day just the same, simple, peaceful, and mine. And in this simplicity, I found what I sought all my life. A house where no one is ashamed of the man who inhabits it. If you ask me, dear listener, if I regret losing my daughter to defend my dignity, I will answer you honestly, no, because I discovered that it is better to be alone with self-respect than accompanied by someone else's shame. I discovered that true family is not based on blood, but on mutual love and respect. And now, as the stars begin to shine over the infinite sea, I close this story with the words I tell my Martha every night. I found my place in the world, my love, a place where I can be myself without apology, without shame, without having to buy anyone's affection. A place where my calloused hands hold a cup of coffee at sunrise and a fishing rod at sunset. A place where I am finally home. May it be so, listener. May it be so. Did you like my story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.